He wakes with sharp pain, unable to move his limbs or clear his mind. He struggles to open his eyes as a throbbing headache clouds his vision. He senses this is not a dream but something far more unsettling and real. A crimson moon shines through the black velvet sky outside his dimly lit room. He stands with effort, but pain forces him down hard onto a wooden chair nearby. He inspects his reflection and notices his black hair and deep brown eyes clearly. His temple shows a grotesque wound with burn marks and grayish-white brain matter. He sees blood covering his palm and a fresh bloody handprint on the table nearby. His gaze shifts to an open notebook with strange black lettering glowing faintly red. The text changes from alien to readable Hermes language and spells a grim message. He recoils and leans back, heart pounding as horror murmurs echo around him. His eyes fix on a brass revolver beside the notebook, an odd object in his life. He wonders how his struggling family could own such a weapon like this revolver. He details the worn room with 2 wooden doors and a bed against the opposite wall. His gaze falls on a strange machine with exposed gears beside the cabinet near the bed. He tries to calm himself and recalls his identity as Klein, a university graduate. Memories of his deceased family flood back, intensifying his sorrow and determination. He steels himself to face an unknown destiny under the ominous crimson moon. Zhou Mingrui recoils at his reflection, seeing a wounded corpse like image. He breathes deeply, feeling strong life force beneath his cold, wounded skin. He frowns and inspects a dim gas lamp, but it fails to light in weak moonlight. He walks to a gas meter embedded in the wall, coin ready in his hand. He inserts the coin into the meter, gears grind and awaken with rhythmic sound. The gas lamp ignites in a bright plume, bathing the room in warm light. Carefully checks the healed wound in the mirror, noticing the slowed recovery. He sighs, relieved to still be alive after the grave injuries he endured. He fetches a towel and soap, heading to the public bathroom in darkness. Turns on the tap and remembers the strict landlord's warnings about water. Using a damp towel, he carefully cleans the bloodstains from his pale face. He changes shirts and returns to his room to find blood splattered beneath his desk. He notices a spent bullet near the wall and empties the revolver's chamber. He reinserts the rounds into the revolver, pondering mysterious questions. His gaze falls on notebook words that hint at suicide or foul play. He questions his transmigration and the true reason behind this strange fate. He recalls a recent luck ritual, suspecting it triggered his unexpected transmigration. He resolves to repeat the ritual tomorrow in hopes of returning to his past life. He repeatedly spins the revolver cylinder, preparing for a Hail Mary attempt. Zhou Mingrui feels comforted after confirming his plan and sets his mind to study. He recalls Klein's broken and missing memories as if replaying a fragmented film. He contemplates missing knowledge about the revolver, suicide, and mysterious notebook words. He doubts Klein's ability to graduate university given his fragmented memories and stress. Zhou remembers university interviews and his mentor's recommendation letters from both schools. He watches the red moon set in the west, giving way to golden dawn light. Suddenly, footsteps approach the door, announcing Melissa's timely arrival. He hurriedly stashes the revolver in a drawer, wary of Melissa's presence. Melissa enters with youthful energy, while Zhou tries to calm his headache. Zhou shows Melissa a silver pocket watch that has recently stopped working. Melissa adjusts the pocket watch, making the second hand tick once more. Melissa leaves for school after packing bread and reminding Zhou of supplies needed. Zhou watches Melissa leave and sighs, his thoughts drifting back to the ritual. He silently wishes to return home as the luck ritual remains his only hope. He repeats opening and closing the pocket watch as a nervous habit of his. Melissa speaks kindly, reminding Klein to buy bread and prepare for his interview. Melissa finishes her tea, tidies up, and prepares to leave for a full day of classes. Melissa reminds Zhou of money limits and shopping needs one last time before leaving. Zhou repeats the word Sunday softly, his mind focused by thoughts of time and fate. Zhou hears the cathedral bells as he prepares his interview clothes. He mutters he's not going to an interview but a ritual for good luck. Zhou switches to a brownish, yellow coat and matching rounded felt hat. He finds savings hidden beneath a cushion inside his bed. He separates 2-1 solely notes and keeps them in his coat pocket. He retrieves his brass revolver, preparing for any danger outside. He loads the revolver with an empty chamber to avoid misfires. He conceals the revolver and money securely in his coat pocket. He exits the dim corridor into the bright sunlight of the morning streets. He moves cautiously through the crowded, grimy summer street. He notices a vagrant playing accordion and children dancing joyfully nearby. He passes a dull-eyed woman whose gaze briefly brightens at the children. Zhou meets Wendy Smyron at the bakery and orders rye bread. Wendy asks about Benson and compliments Zhou's future prospects. Zhou shrugs at Wendy's playful remarks and remains uncertain. Wendy packs 16 loaves as Zhou listens to news on bread prices. Pays Wendy 9 pence thanks to protests repealing the Grain Act. Zhou heads to the market, determined to prepare a meal for his sister. He studies flyers about a circus performance at the municipal square. A horsewoman offers Zhou a free tarot card reading at her tent. Zhou declines extra services and follows the tarot woman into the dark tent. Zhou sits and studies tarot cards like the Magician and the Emperor on the table. The tarot woman instructs Zhou to shuffle and cut the deck himself for accuracy. Zhou warily confirms the reading is free and then shuffles and cuts the deck skillfully. Fortune teller asks Zhou what he wants to inquire about before reading cards. Zhou answers that he wants to know about past, present, and future. The woman smiles as she asks Zhou to reshuffle, emphasizing intent matters in divination. Zhou resents the extra step but calmly reshuffles and cuts the cards again. Cards placed as past, present, and future. Zhou chooses to view the present card first. The present card, the Fool, is revealed, showing a colorful figure with a puppy. Suddenly, an angry woman bursts in, claiming divination rights and calling out an impersonator. The original fortune teller explains she seriously performs divinations despite the clown's antics. Zhou refuses paid interpretation, clutches revolver, and leaves the tent in disappointment. Zhou spends 25 copper pennies at market for basic food and hurries home to prepare ritual. Translates ritual phrases into 2 ancient local languages before attempting again tomorrow. Zhou arranges 4 rye breads in corners of his room to prepare for the luck ritual. He walks counter-clockwise in a square, chanting blessings with solemn concentration. After 4 steps, he closes his eyes and waits anxiously for the ritual's outcome. Suddenly, the air thickens, strange whispers surround Zhou, causing intense head pain. His body tightens as psychedelic colors swirl in his head during the ritual's climax. Zhou loses consciousness briefly, then awakens to gray fog and crimson stars around him. Touching the stars causes brilliant bursts of crimson light, overwhelming Zhou's spirit. His mind empties and spirit dissipates as the crimson stars ignite around him. In Lone Kingdom, Audrey Hall chants to her antique bronze mirror, seeking its power. After failed chants, the mirror suddenly glows with crimson light surrounding Audrey. Alger Wilson stands on a stormy sailboat holding a glass bottle with swirling elements. In the fog, Audrey, Alger, and Zhou awaken confused and notice each other nearby. The 3 strangers speak in unison, startled by the mysterious fog and their presence. Zhou Mingrui senses visitors confused and tense within the gray fog world. He decides to reveal a mysterious identity to gain advantage over the visitors. Audrey eagerly questions Zhou about becoming a beyonder in this strange place. Without warning, the fog shifts, revealing an immense palace dome around them. Alger explains the churches and dangers beyonders face in the Iron Age era. Audrey expresses fear of losing freedom if she becomes a beyonder in the church. Alger offers 2 rare sequence 9 potion recipes to become a beyonder. He details the sailor potion granting strength and underwater agility. He then explains the spectator potion enhances mental sharpness forever. Audrey is captivated and asks how to acquire the spectator potion recipe. Alger demands ghost shark blood in exchange for the rare potion's formula. He assures a safe trade witnessed by Zhou Mingrui, the powerful master. Audrey asks Zhou to be the witness for their trade, respecting his power. Both politely ask Zhou his name. He smiles, calling himself the Fool. Audrey and Alger address Zhou Mingrui as the Fool, feeling its fitting mystery. Zhou agrees politely to witness the trade, smiling at their respectful requests. Alger instructs Audrey to deliver ghost shark blood to a bar named Williams Runs. Audrey chooses to memorize the formula here, trusting the security of the meeting. Alger and Audrey suggest making the gatherings regular for mutual benefit. Zhou weighs risks and benefits, deciding more gatherings are worth the chance. Zhou declares weekly meetings will happen Monday at 3, promising equal exchange. Audrey clenches fist with excitement, thrilled by the promise of future meetings. Audrey suggests code names from tarot cards to keep true names secret. Alger chooses the Hanged Man as his code name, matching Audrey's tarot theme. Audrey proposes naming the trio the Tarot Club, watching Zhou for approval. Alger repeats the delivery address. Audrey commits it to memory carefully. Audrey shares shares rumors about tarot cards. Alger explains their spiritual function. Alger confirms Emperor Roselle's secret cards contain mysteries of the divine. Audrey repeats divine mysteries with longing. Zhou's headache worsens quietly. Zhou calls the gathering to an end and nods, sensing his strength fading fast. Audrey and Alger respond in unison with respect as the gathering concludes. Zhou closes the connection and looks forward to their next meeting with a smile. Zhou blinks and returns to his apartment, the foggy realm fading away fast. He sighs softly, massaging his temples, admitting he cannot return soon. Zhou vows to master mysticism before trying dangerous rituals again. He adopts the name Klein, refocusing on plans with a lighter, joking mood. Alger wakes on a stormy ship as the glass bottle in his palm shatters. A crystal, like snowflake, forms on Alger's palm, then vanishes into his skin. Alger stands silently on deck, then heads toward the ship's quiet cabin. A man with soft blonde hair greets Alger with a storm-related blessing. Alger returns the greeting, then enters the captain's cabin at corridor's end. The captain's cabin is quiet, with candlelight flickering over books and wine. Pale middle-aged captain declares he won't give in, face tense. Alger calmly encourages the captain, then suddenly attacks with force. Alger chokes the captain and smashes him through the wooden wall. The captain falls through the broken wall into massive stormy ocean waves. Alger calmly wipes his hand and throws the handkerchief into the raging sea. The blonde man rushes in worried and asks Alger what transpired in the cabin. Alger reveals the captain escaped despite possessing beyonder powers. The blonde man curses and looks into the distance across rough waves and rain. Alger tells the blonde man the captain won't survive if the storm lasts long. Alger notices no living crew remains, sail and rudder move on their own. Alger sighs, thinking about the mysterious fool veiled in gray-white fog. Audrey, in Empress Burrow, marvels as the crimson mark on her hand fades. Audrey dances happily, performing the ancient elf dance, smiling brightly. Annie knocks and reminds Audrey to start preparing for the ceremony. Audrey and Annie discuss which dress to wear for the formal ceremony. Count Hall arrives, joyfully telling Audrey it is time to depart. Zhou Mingrui, now Klein, awakens with 4 black dots forming a square on his hand. He senses the ominous nature of the spots, linking them to unknown forces inside him. Klein recalls a saying about fear of the unknown as he contemplates his strange new reality. He fights fatigue as exhaustion from sleeplessness and ritual strain weigh on him. He finally succumbs and collapses onto the bed, falling asleep immediately. Hunger wakes him, and he rubs his temples, feeling a slight headache. Checks the silver vine, leaf pocket watch. 3 hours have passed during his nap. His hunger overtakes all thoughts. He decides to eat before pondering mysteries. He prepares boiling water using a furnace and coal, pacing while waiting patiently. He resists temptation to cook mutton alone, remembering to wait for Melissa. Remembering peas and potatoes, he takes 2 potatoes to prepare a boiled meal. He boils the potatoes with salt and eagerly peels one, savoring the aroma. He enjoys the sweet, powdery taste and drinks the salty broth slowly. After eating, he feels rejuvenated and looks out the window into the sunlight. He resolves to overcome fear, find mysticism, and wait for the next ritual gathering. He decides to investigate the mystery of Klein's suicide by reviewing his notebooks. He finds notes about a dangerous ancient epic and a mysterious notebook from the 4th epoch. Despite fear, he knows he must meet Welch to confront the dangerous truth. Sudden loud knocks at the door echo as Klein stiffens, reacting with alertness. A sudden knock startles Klein while he contemplates his body's past owner. Sharp voice identifies itself as Bitch Mountbatten, the policeman on the street. Klein hides his revolver in the extinguished stove, covering it with coals and a kettle. For policemen arrive, Klein opens the door and apologizes for his nap. Middle-aged inspector questions Klein about his knowledge of Welch McGovern. Klein confirms his acquaintance with Welch and discusses the 4th epic notebook. The gray-eyed inspector solemnly reveals that Welch and Naya have both died. Klein reacts shocked, inquiring if they were killed or died by suicide. Gray-eyed inspector details the suicide scenes with no signs of struggle or drugs. Klein remembers last seeing Welch and Naya. The young inspector listens carefully. The young inspector examines Klein's notes, questioning a cryptic phrase inside. Klein honestly admits ignorance, hoping honesty will ease suspicion. Bitch angrily rejects Klein's claim. Gray-eyed inspector remains open to possibility. The gray-eyed inspector promises an expert will help Klein recall memories soon. Klein worries about his buried Earth memories being exposed unexpectedly. Young inspector respects Klein's survival, warns him not to leave town. The young inspector calls calls Klein lucky to have survived the tragic events alone. The inspectors leave, warning Klein against leaving Tianjin or becoming a fugitive. Klein ponders the extraordinary claim that normally all involved would die. Klein hesitates and stops at the door, doubting the police's true intentions. He loudly calls for protection but hears no reply, feeling more anxious. Klein mocks the fake responses and closes the door, feeling unease fade slowly. He paces restlessly hours later, murmuring and unable to calm his nerves. He waits anxiously, recalling a comforting but distant memory of Melissa. Klein retrieves his revolver from hiding, preparing for danger ahead. He waits quietly, hearing only distant tenant conversations outside his door. Relieved, he exhales and resumes thinking about Melissa and their upcoming meal. Klein thinks over Melissa's cooking method, appreciating the humble but flavorful meal. He recalls his amateur cooking skills and the dead Welch McGovern's lessons. He begins cooking cautiously, mixing spices and preparing the stew patiently. Klein times the cooking carefully, waiting for Melissa to return home soon. Melissa finally arrives, surprised by the enticing aroma of the cooking stew. She admires Klein's cooking and gains confidence from the delicious scents. Klein smiles, joking about his cooking skills and scheme behind the meal. He invites Melissa to wash up and prepare to taste the stew with confident calm. Steam rises from the pot as the stew nears completion, enticing them both. Melissa returns, tasting the stew and finding it rich, tender, and delicious. They enjoy the meal together. Klein jokes about future meals at better places. Melissa burps in embarrassment. Klein laughs gently and reminds her of chores. Melissa checks the cooking supplies after eating, surprised by Klein's use. She suggests cooking next time, and Klein urges her to prepare for her job. Klein struggles to study despite strange events disrupting his focus. Night falls and Klein prepares to sleep as Melissa works quietly beside him. Klein is woken by a loud knock on his door in the early dawn. Dunn Smith, a police inspector, arrives early to question Klein about an incident. Inspector Smith reveals evidence of Klein's visit to Mr. Welch's on the day of his death. Klein denies guilt but admits his memory of the day is fragmented and unclear. Smith presses Klein about a missing revolver linked to the incident and searches the room. Klein explains the revolver was found behind the bedboard after his failed suicide attempt. Smith insists an expert must confirm Klein's memory loss for the investigation to continue. Klein prepares to cooperate reluctantly, aware of the risky and mysterious situation. Klein leaves a note and is escorted by policemen through the dim hallways. Outside, the police carriage waits amid a noisy crowd as they prepare to depart. Klein attempts to escape the police by fleeing into a crowd during a street brawl. Klein hires a carriage to flee the city toward the pier, planning to evade capture. Klein realizes the carriage driver is Dunn Smith heading to Welch's place, trapping him. Klein wakes from the nightmare, feeling cold sweat, and reassures himself quietly. Klein moves toward the washroom and spots Dunn Smith's silhouette outside the corridor window. Klein steps back, unsure if awake as Dunn Smith reveals himself. Dunn Smith says he guides dreams, not controls them, calming Klein. Dunn explains dreams amplify hidden emotions but reflect reality. Klein wonders if his dream was real or a trick he showed Dunn Smith. Klein asks if he truly lost memory. Dunn Smith warns to confirm with expert. Dunn Smith reveals missing fourth epic notebook links Klein to case. Klein hesitates but accepts. Dunn urges to lock door and come along. Klein calms down, washes face before following Dunn downstairs. Dunn asks Klein why he fled at dream's end. Klein admits fear of guilt. Dunn reveals carriage is same as in Klein's dream, police emblem visible. Klein questions if memory loss would end the case. Dunn says yes, theoretically. Dunn cautions twisted cases can resurface unexpectedly despite closure. Dunn recounts how cult victim lived a good life but strangled himself later. Klein feels horror at the story, sensing his possible tragic fate. The carriage grows silent as Klein wrestles with his fears and hopes. The carriage halts. Dunn announces arrival at Welch's apartment. Dunn introduces the expert as renowned spirit medium and true spirit medium. Klein follows Dunn to Welch's house, sensing silent eyes watching him. Klein senses spirits lurking unseen, feeling tense despite no visible threat. Dunn advises Klein to ignore the eerie followers as they reach Welch's front door. A quiet woman in black robes greets them, the medium Daly, surrounded by eerie blue light. Daly reveals original spirits have vanished. Only harmless little spirits remain now. Klein bows politely and sits when Daly gestures toward an armchair. Daly offers calming floral fragrances to relax Klein before beginning the ritual. Dunn explains Daly's teasing nature, another, mentioning Klein's mother's devout church ties. Daly lights the candle with a mantha floral essence, filling room with calm aroma. Klein's vision blurs and colors deepen as Daly describes the eye of the spirit essence. Daly introduces herself as the spirit medium, focusing her gaze on Klein's head top. Klein struggles to keep rational thoughts, greeting Daly with a weary voice. Daly explains human minds hold vast secrets, likening spirit knowledge to an ocean. Klein admits he cannot recall memories, expressing pain with honesty. Daly ends the session after Klein shows no progress and quietly disappears. Colors normalize as Daly packs away bottles. Klein breathes easier again. Dunn questions Daly why psychology alchemist theory was used in ceremony. Daly defends method's accuracy but admits no trace of culprit was found. Dunn leads Klein outside, advising him not to reveal the incident to others. Klein asks about curses or traces. Dunn says Daly found no need for further checks. Dunn comforts Klein with statistics about survivors rarely facing after effects. Dunn suggests joining as civilian or beyonder for protection if troubles arise. Klein asks if becoming a beyonder is possible. Dunn replies it depends. Dunn warns becoming a Nighthawk means losing freedom and facing great risks. Dunn explains many beyonders lose control, causing cases among their own teammates. Klein feels turmoil after learning the dangers that beyonders face. Dunn says understanding beyonders requires becoming one, implying secrecy. Klein doubts how to join without knowing the full truth, puzzled and joking. Dunn clarifies civilian staff are also beyonders with some access to secrets. Klein paraphrases that civilian staff gain some knowledge and consider joining later. Dunn warns that becoming a beyonder is strictly controlled by every church. Klein doubts civilian staff recruitments are also strict. Dunn says no problem. Dunn says Klein's survival and unique talents make him a welcome candidate. Dunn jokes about luck, then praises Klein's history degree as valuable. Dunn explains the need for historians to handle dangerous ancient documents safely. Dunn admits most beyonders dislike dry studies, even the sleepless find it dull. Hiring historians risks exposing secrets, so professionals in ranks is preferred. Klein asks why they don't groom new historians directly for these special roles. Dunn explains confidentiality risks mean he must take responsibility for failures. Most civilian staff come from within the church, respecting strict secrecy rules. Klein questions why strict secrecy is preferred over public awareness and safety. Dunn explains spreading knowledge causes more chaos due to human folly and fear. Klein reflects bitterly that humans never learn from history's repeated tragedies. Dunn quotes Emperor Roselle, linking faith and fear to growing troubles. Dunn reveals judiciary fears that faith and fear together destroy everything. Dunn invites Klein to join as a civilian staff member before arriving home. Klein asks for time to consider. Dunn agrees, demanding strict secrecy. Silence returns as the carriage nears Klein's home on Iron Cross Street. Klein asks where to find Dunn after deciding. Dunn gives a secret location. Dunn tells Klein to visit the Hound pub and speak to its boss for contacts. Klein checks his pocket watch. Dawn is near in the empty morning street. Busy district is silent at night. Klein breathes in the cool, fresh air. Klein notices his linen shirt back soaked with cold sweat in the still night air. Klein returns home and finds Melissa waiting silently by his desk. Melissa questions Klein's whereabouts, seeking clear answers. Klein admits his sleepless restlessness and training effort. Melissa advises against stress and assures Klein's ability. Melissa unveils her mechanical puppet made from scrap items. The mechanical puppet moves rhythmically, soothing Melissa. Klein praises the simplicity and asks about the origin. Melissa explains the puppet was made from scraps recently. Klein nervously calls it a rudimentary puppet, changing the subject. Melissa abruptly leaves after sudden stomach pains interrupt her. Klein sits quietly, pondering the dangers and choices ahead. He weighs the losses and gains of joining Nighthawks or beyonders. Klein resolves to join the Nighthawks civilian staff at sunrise. Melissa awakens again, surprised by Klein's thoughtful stretching. Melissa shares her method of listing pros and cons clearly. Klein agrees, smiling, reflecting on similarities with Melissa. Klein naps after breakfast, waiting for pubs to open in afternoon. Klein dresses formally and catches a public carriage to Basic Street. He boards a crowded double-decker carriage heading to Champagne Street. Klein arrives at Basic Street and finds the lively Hound pub. Inside, Klein watches dog, fighting rats in iron cages at the center. Klein approaches the bar and asks for Mr. Wright as instructed by Dunn. Wright confirms Klein's request and directs him to another location. Klein exits the pub. Murmurs of Doug's loss float behind him. Klein stares and finds finds Blackthorn Security on Zutland Street. Klein finds a quiet security office with a brown-haired girl behind the desk. Roseanne leaves the desk to fetch Captain Dunn Smith for Klein's visit. Roseanne nervously talks of her past and the Nighthawks as they descend stairs. Roseanne shares a story about Leonard's clumsy first day as a sleepless beyonder. Roseanne explains her family ties and hopes to be colleagues with Klein soon. Roseanne guides Klein through a hallway decorated with Evernight goddess emblems. Roseanne points out directions at an intersection leading to key locations underground. Roseanne leads Klein toward the imposing Chinese gate carved with sacred emblems. Roseanne instructs Klein to enter alone while she waits outside the Chinese gate room. Klein enters the room. Captain Dunn Smith welcomes him with a warm voice. Dunn Smith asks Klein if he is certain about joining the Nighthawks. Dunn presents the confidential contract for Klein to review and sign. Klein signs the contract with a thumbprint after testing the pen carefully. Dunn Smith stamps the contract and warmly welcomes Klein into the squad. Klein confirms he will address Dunn as captain after signing the contract. Dunn reveals the official paperwork backing Blackthorn Security's true role. Dunn explains the division of police units for supernatural and mundane duties. Klein asks about the Nighthawk squad size and the number of Beyonders involved. Klein questions Captain Dunn about Beyonders losing control and its causes. Dunn reflects by the window, preparing his pipe with tobacco and mint. Dunn introduces the creation myth while Klein listens attentively. Klein recalls the creation myth learned from his Sunday school education. Klein notices the myth's similarity to the Chinese Pangu creation myth. Dunn elaborates on the creator's body parts and the races they formed. Klein comments on the detailed myth with a touch of humor and disbelief. Dunn asks Klein to recite the Evernight goddess's full title for clarity. Klein recites the goddess's titles, recalling his mother's devout prayers. Dunn questions the symbolism of the red moon in the goddess's title. Klein confirms the red moon represents a single eye of the creator. Dunn explains humanity's cleverness and their resistance to evil entities. Klein repeats Dunn's explanation about all beings stemming from one origin. Dunn describes how potion sequences were perfected to harness Beyonder powers. Klein notices the term blasphemy slate and recalls its mention by the Hanged Man. Dunn warns the blasphemy slate is dangerous and must be reported immediately. Dunn details 4 types of power loss due to potion misuse and spiritual effects. Klein asks with growing alarm about each outcome's terrible consequences. Dunn explains potion misuse may cause madness, cruelty, or monster transformation. Klein shudders but listens closely as Dunn warns against losing control. Dunn details the final and most common cause of losing control among Beyonders. Dunn quotes the Nighthawks founder, calling them guardians and miserable wretches. Dunn calls Beyonders miserable wretches battling danger and madness. Dunn smiles as Klein absorbs the harsh truths of Beyonders' lives. Klein says every gain has a price while regaining his composure. Dunn explains low-sequence Beyonders are not as powerful as guns. Klein contemplates dangers of potion misuse but sees value in power. Dunn says advancement needs contributions and decisions from higher-ups. Dunn outlines Nighthawk's civilian jobs guarding and supporting the team. Klein questions his duties. Dunn reassures he is a valued professional. Dunn assigns Klein daily street patrols and archival research duties. Klein understands the diary's importance and his unique role in its hunt. Dunn details weekly rest, professional readings, and shift duties ahead. Dunn introduces Chinese Gate, guarded by traps and church keepers. The gate houses potions, magical materials, and dangerous captives tightly. Dunn describes 4 grades of sealed artifacts and their security levels. Dunn warns about Zangwil, a corrupted archbishop with artifact. The artifact is a common quill that writes without ink, highly guarded. Dunn finishes, advising Klein to find Old Neil in the armory next. Old Neil, a former member, now handles records as health slows him down. Klein wears his hat while pondering the true nature of the sealed artifact. Dunn reminds Klein about the advance payment and the need for a new suit and cane. Roseanne arrives quickly after Dunn calls her to escort Klein to the accountant. Roseanne escorts Klein out as Dunn warns about demon hunting bullets and shooting range rules. Roseanne talks about the captain's forgetfulness and Mrs. Oriana's affable nature. Klein finds Mrs. Oriana's office and meets the refined black-haired accountant. Mrs. Oriana writes an advance slip while Klein completes the payment formalities. Mrs. Oriana counts cash, shares her haunted past, and hands Klein his advance. They discuss a serial killer beyonder who terrorized Tianjin City years ago. Klein leaves after promising to visit Old Neil and treasures the advance payment. Klein finds Old Neil's office behind a half-closed iron door and knocks. Old Neil invites Klein inside for hand-ground coffee, a rare cup for him. Neil explains why he avoids coffee late. It affects his sleep and visions. Klein inquires about important documents as he shows Neil Dunn's note. Neil explains the difficulty of deciphering Roselle Gustav's secret diary. Neil reveals his success in decoding number-like symbols and his genius mind. Neil asks Klein to help with the diary and offers him the pages tomorrow. Klein stares at the symbols and suddenly recognizes them as simplified Chinese. Klein sees his surroundings and confirms he hasn't transmigrated back. Klein reads simplified Chinese diary pages, recognizing his homeland's script. Diary reveals Emperor Roselle's discoveries and his trapped, mysterious fellow. The diary talks about potions and a brewing conflict among kingdoms. Klein feels excitement and mystery bubbling from the diary's secrets. Old Neil notices Klein staring and asks what he is doing with the diary. Klein laughs off his absorption and explains he's trying to interpret Roselle's secrets. Old Neil says such mysteries are rare now due to species extinction and lost knowledge. They joke about founding a fantastic creatures protection association together. Old Neil reveals few relevant records survive despite Emperor Roselle's glory. Old Neil checks Klein's revolver approval note and hints at holster fitting. Old Neil opens a locked iron door revealing weapons and police gear inside. Neil presents bullets, a holster, and a special operations badge to Klein. Klein tests the holster, buckling it securely near his left armpit. Old Neil praises the fit and accurate judgment of the holster accessory. Klein pockets other items, logs the entry, and chats casually with Old Neil. Klein remembers to learn about sequences and potions as he leaves. Leonard Mitchell greets Klein, revealing he is Sequence 8, the Midnight Poet. Leonard confirms Klein's special status for surviving despite danger. Leonard turns away quietly, wondering if Klein noticed anything unusual. He hears Rosen relay the captain's message about his visit on Monday. Klein plans to visit the university and formally end his interview process. He suppresses his voice and asks Roseanne about the start of the complete sequence. Rosen warns Klein about dangers Beyonder's face, urging him to reconsider. Klein interrupts her, clarifying he only wants to understand the basics. Roseanne shares her respect for Beyonders despite personal fears. She recounts her father's warning about the dangers of power. Roseanne sighs and shares knowledge about Beyonders' rarity and sequences. She names Sleepless as the starting sequence at the church's core. Roseanne describes the Sleepless powers and their father's role. She explains about higher sequences, Midnight Poet and Nightmare. Klein recalls Captain entering his dream, confirming Nightmare sequence. Roseanne notes Captain is one of 2 sequence 7 Beyonders in the city. She admits ignorance about sequences beyond the captain's rank. Klein asks about incomplete starting sequences beyond the main tier. Roseanne names Spirit Medium as a notable incomplete sequence 7. Klein connects the Spirit Medium to Madame Daly, confirming his insight. Roseanne envies the Spirit Medium path but cautiously considers it. Their chat winds down. Klein bows respectfully before departing. Klein checks notes and clutches gold pounds, smiling with quiet joy. He decides to treat Melissa with his earnings, honoring a custom of China. Klein walks Zutland, feeling the warm, humid breeze as he thinks deeply. He notices he only has 3 pence and worries the carriage fare costs 4. Quickly rejects walking the rest since carrying 12 pounds feels unsafe. He avoids banks due to high fees, his expression tightening in frustration. His eyes brighten spotting a clothing shop, sparking an idea to get change. Inside Wilker Clothing, a red, vested salesperson greets Klein politely. He requests a heavy cane. The salesman shows an expensive Ironheart Wood 1. Finding it too heavy, Klein tests other canes before selecting a silver, inlaid ebony one. At the counter, Klein offers a gold pound note but fails to get a discount. The staff explain prices are fixed. Klein pays the full amount without complaint. Tests the cane's swing, pleased, while staff step back cautiously nearby. Relaxed, the cashier hands Klein the change with a polite smile of relief. Outside, Klein inspects the note's watermarks before storing them safely away. He rides a short carriage, then transfers once more before reaching his door safely. At home, Klein loads silver demon bullets into his revolver cylinder with care. He practices drawing the revolver repeatedly until his arms ache, focused and precise. At sunset, Klein hears footsteps outside outside as he relaxes once more in familiar clothes. Melissa enters softly, noting the cold stove and mentions Benson will come tomorrow. Klein suggests eating out at a restaurant to celebrate his new job, smiling warmly. Surprised, Melissa questions Klein's job, learning he got an advance payment. He explains his new 5-year job with good pay, preferring it over university. Melissa reminds Klein of Jenny's hardship and urges him not to waste his salary. Klein argues that a proper home reflects his new salary to Melissa. Melissa advises Klein to save money and wait before rushing to move out. Klein insists his salary shows his success, despite Melissa's concerns. Melissa warns of needing savings for emergencies and economic instability. Klein suggests a small feast with leftovers and treats from local hawkers. Melissa accepts money from Klein for groceries and plans to buy lemon cake. Klein signals Melissa to buy fruits on her way, and she agrees happily. Klein admires the fresh riverside scene while reflecting before his interview. Klein notes Tianjin University's impressive building compared to Koei University. 2 rowing boats pass by, voices echo with rhythmic heaving. Klein reminisces about youth watching the rowers, feeling nostalgic. Klein arrives at the university building and knocks on the interview office door. Harvin Stone, surprised, reminds Klein the interview is an hour away. Klein explains he found a job and will skip the interview today. Mentor Quentin Cohen and Isaac arrive, curious about Klein's new job. Klein shares details of his history-related security consultant job. Isaac mentions Welch and Naya were killed by burglars, startling Klein. Klein explains his limited involvement with Welch's historical diary help. Isaac hopes Cohen recalls details, but Cohen has no impression. Isaac laughs off memory lapse. Klein asks to be updated on clues. Cohen checks his pocket watch and calls Isaac, ending their chat early. Isaac and Cohen leave for meeting. Klein thanks office owner Harvin. Klein reads Tianjin Morning Post outdoors, sunlight behind him. The newspaper reports violent burglary and murder at Welch's home. Klein senses someone watching him, hairs rise on his neck. Klein walks cautiously, reading the paper, watching for threats. Klein boards a public carriage to escape the watcher's gaze. Inside the carriage, Klein exhales as the watcher's presence fades. Klein debates his next move, fearing exposure and malicious intent. Arriving at Champagne Street, Klein feels watched again as he leaves carriage. He walks toward Zutland Street but detours to the Red Moonlight Street Plaza. Inside St. Selena Cathedral, Klein moves quietly toward the prayer hall. Klein sits quietly in the pew, listening to the bishop's gentle preaching. After Mass, Klein enters confession booth to report being tailed. The bishop sends Klein through a secret door to meet someone called Dunn Smith. A black-robed priest appears and leads Klein toward the secret meeting. Klein follows the black-robed priest through the dark stone stairwell silently. Klein enters Blackthorn Security Company and greets Roseanne at the reception. Roseanne warns Klein about knocking loudly and directs him to the captain's office. Klein visits Dunn Smith in his office, reporting someone is following him. Dunn Smith suggests a private investigator might be following Klein because of the notebook. Dunn Smith advises Klein to return quietly and do what he wishes without breaking laws. Klein revisits the dark stone passage and meets the silent priest standing as a shadow. Klein leaves St. Selena Cathedral quietly, blending in with the few worshippers left. Outside, Klein senses he is being watched closely like prey by a hidden observer. He questions why the observer avoided following him inside the cathedral. Klein arrives at the Zutland Shooting Club, entering to practice shooting quietly. Underground at the shooting range, Klein readies his brass revolver to shoot targets. Klein practices steady aiming and pulls the trigger, adjusting for recoil repeatedly. He reloads the revolver with brass bullets, then aims and shoots to improve accuracy. He finishes shooting all rounds, hitting the target steadily and aiming for the bullseye. Klein exits the shooting range, feeling the familiar presence of being observed once more. He rides a tracked carriage and returns to his apartment on Iron Cross Street without incident. Klein returns home to find his elder brother Benson sitting at the desk working. Benson greets Klein, who describes his job and plans to celebrate with Melissa later. Brothers share a humorous debate about the foolish coin system of their kingdom. Klein mocks society sharply while laughing with his brother Benson. Benson talks about visiting the pier and checking terrace houses with Klein. Klein questions the landlord's property. Benson reminds him of their lease terms. Benson explains harsh lease agreements and landlords' worries over short contracts. Klein summarizes landlords' price hikes. Benson sighs at society's harshness. Benson reassures Klein the contract issue is solvable, mocking their landlord's wit. Klein insists Mr. Frankie's intelligence is not as low slow as thought, if on form. Benson laughs louder and reassures that their landlord is easily convinced. Klein prepares a simple meal of pan, fried fish soup and buttered rye bread. He shops fresh food and spices at the market with just a few coins. After visiting Smyron Bakery, Klein trains arm strength using heavy books at home. He abandons boxing practice after forgetting routines, opts for simpler exercises. Benson and Melissa sit at desk, awaiting Klein's carefully prepared dinner. Klein offers ginger beer to siblings, celebrating his new job with lemon pudding. Benson praises Klein's cooking while Melissa tries the beef soup cautiously. Klein tastes his dishes, feeling regrets but proud. Siblings enjoy the meal. Benson, Klein, and Melissa toast, enjoying the meal and drinks with cheer. Klein advises Melissa on tasting desserts first. She insists she enjoys it nonetheless. They clean up after dinner then study. Time passes productively before bedtime. Klein dreams of Dunn Smith, who warns him about an intruder in his room. Klein wakes to find a thin stranger searching his room at the desk silently. Klein's heart pounds as he spots the hidden intruder in his room. He calmly draws the revolver, aiming it cautiously at the stranger's head. Klein speaks calmly, warning the intruder to move slowly to avoid misfires. Intruder's sharp blue eyes stare fiercely as he slowly obeys Klein's command. Klein gestures toward the door, urging the man outside to avoid disturbing others. The man slowly opens the door, then suddenly drops and rolls away like a shadow. Benson and Melissa, undisturbed by the noise, quickly fall back to sleep. Klein listens to the serene melody drifting from beyond the door, calming his nerves. Klein smiles, noting the revolver's empty chamber as a measure against misfires. Dunn Smith arrives, reporting the intruder's defeat and sealing the door behind him. Dunn reveals the intruder belongs to an ancient secretive organization from long ago. They discuss clues on the enemy, including a diary linked to an ancient noble family. Dunn warns the enemy is cunning but may retreat if we are believed to hold key secrets. Klein asks the worst case if the stolen diary holds extremely important secrets. Dunn offers Klein a choice, to become a beyonder or wait to become a sleepless later. Klein requests details about the available sequence 9 options before deciding. Dunn describes Mystery Prior, linked to Roseanne and ancient ascetics of high morals. Mystery Priors master diverse magic knowledge but lack full sequence completion. Dunn explains Corpse Collector sequence grants undead sight and protection from decay. Seer is the third sequence 9 option. Klein recalls its significance and regrets. Klein asks about Seer abilities, learning their true potential is complex. Dunn explains Seer potion grants qualification to learn mysticism, not instant power. Seers specialize in mystic knowledge but lack combat ability and direct offense. Klein thinks deeply about his options, weighing risks and missing sequences. He feels conflicted about his future but resolves to decide calmly by Monday morning. Klein lays back on his bed, eyes fixed on the underside of the upper bunk where moonlight falls. Outside, a drunken man staggers by as a carriage rides down quiet, moonlit streets. Klein's heart quiets as he recalls simple memories of family, friends, and lost love. He resolves to cherish life more, his decision forming as dawn begins to rise gold. After washing, Klein buys rye bread from kind bakery owner Mrs. Wendy Smyron. Crisp Sunday morning, Klein and Melissa read old newspapers while discussing housing options. Benson explains housing classes and reveals their status as slightly worse than middle class. They debate strict regulations of charity housing and realities of poverty in their city. Melissa quietly reveals a friend's changed attitude after moving to a poorer neighborhood. 3 walk silently down Daffodil Street toward a housing improvement company office. A kind middle-aged man named Scarter greets them warmly at the housing company office. Scarter shows several terrace houses available, suited for various family sizes. The siblings decide to first inspect a terrace house on 2 Daffodil Street nearby. Siblings explore a terrace house at 2 Daffodil Street with Scarter. They enter the living room illuminated by sunlight through an oriel window. Scarter shows the open living and dining space with a red wooden table. Scarter details the kitchen, guest room, bathroom layout without appliances. Bathroom split into wash and toilet areas with an accordion door inside. The siblings explore stairs and are informed about the underground cellar. Benson follows Scarter upstairs to see upper floor bedrooms and bathrooms. The upstairs bathroom has a bathtub and the same partitioned toilet facility. Melissa stops briefly before following them to the bedrooms upstairs. The bedrooms upstairs are modest, some with beds, dressers, or bookcases. Scarter points out a small balcony and explains the limited drying space. Scarter explains the rent, deposit, and furniture usage payments calmly. Klein inquires about buying the house, Scarta firmly denies the option. Scarta mentions land deed prices. Klein calculates their savings possibilities. Benson negotiates rent and deposit reductions with Scarta respectfully. Contract signed, deposit paid, siblings hold their new keys at the doorstep. The siblings meet landlord Frankie to terminate their current lease formally. Benson persuades Frankie with reasoning about rental income and tenants. Frankie agrees and prepares to sign the lease termination contract with them. Siblings move their belongings slowly between their old and new homes. Klein cleans his desk, sets pen and ink, feeling a quiet satisfaction at home. Dusty and tired, Benson and Melissa enter and break into cheerful laughter with Klein. Klein informal wear arrives at Blackthorn Security and greets Roseanne. Klein meets Captain Dunn Smith and announces his decision solemnly in office. Dunn Smith silently stares at Klein, breaking the silence after a long pause. Dunn warns Klein about the irreversible consequences of consuming the potion. Klein confirms his choice, respecting the voice inside him despite the risks. Dunn stands up, puts on his top hat, and gestures Klein to follow downwards. Footsteps echo as they descend silently down the vast stairwell and passageway. Klein awkwardly breaks silence, asking about mysticism's origins underground. Dunn explains mysticism stems from experiments, divine gifts, and dangerous murmurs. They change direction at the intersection and approach St. Selena Cathedral's secret area. Dunn reveals the alchemy room and instructs Klein to wait safely inside. Dunn explains Klein's status, pay, and advises learning mysticism with Old Neil. Dunn warns about the secret order's threat and relates them to ancient corrupted nobles. Klein watches Dunn leave and then steps cautiously into the mysterious alchemy room. Inside the room, Klein curiously inspects chemical tools and mystical items cautiously. Old Neil enters carrying a silver chest, sizing up Klein with a ready smile. Old Neil orders Klein to light gas lamps and close the door before starting preparation. Old Neil scrubs the black cauldron with tied branches before starting the potion. Old Neil explains potion making is simple, requiring precise formula steps without magic. Klein expresses surprise, comparing the potion process to his simple rituals. Old Neil praises the gods and opens the formula chest, revealing ancient parchment. Klein reads the seer potion ingredients silently as Old Neil begins preparations. Klein questions if he should drink the strange dark, blue potion directly. Old Neil jokes about relaxing with wine, cigar, and a dance before drinking. Old Neil advises not to hesitate or nervousness will block absorption. Klein drinks the potion despite his nervousness, recalling childhood medicine. The potion's cold tentacles stir within Klein, causing convulsions and blurred vision. His vision blurs into vibrant colors and strange light clusters in a misty void. Klein senses lifelike lights and intangible objects amidst the blurred fog around him. His body convulses as his consciousness suddenly merges with the strange vision. The ethereal murmur overwhelms Klein as he experiences a painful head sensation. Old Neil explains Klein's symptoms stem from uncontrolled potion energy seepage. Old Neil guides Klein to imagine a simple object to calm his mind and ease pain. Klein imagines his halved black silk top hat to focus and reduce the potion's effects. The overwhelming senses begin to clear as Klein's focus on the imagined hat deepens. Old Neil encourages Klein to imagine a fantastical object outside reality to enter cogitation. Imagining floating spheres of light, Klein enters a calming mystical trance state. Old Neil praises Klein's quick entry into cogitation, calling him nearly as good as himself. Old Neil teaches Klein spirit vision, a key mysticism skill for beyonders. Following Old Neil's instructions, Klein practices hand movements to see his aura. Old Neil explains the 4 levels of human non-physical parts in spirit vision. Klein observes different aura colors on Old Neil's body, revealing his health. Klein boldly claims he is now a beyonder and notices eerie eyes behind Old Neil. Illusory eyes vanish as Klein's spirit vision loses trace instantly. Klein observes the room's objects with spirit vision, finding no visible spirits or glows. Klein sees vivid colors around the silver chest, indicating remnant spiritualities inside. Old Neil explains remnant spiritualities in materials come from extraordinary beings' remains. Old Neil shares how desiccated black, spotted frog is needed for a potent but disgusting potion. Klein questions if spirits are everywhere, but Old Neil explains spirits cannot freely roam here. Old Neil warns that spirits and the spiritual world are different, and spirits do not roam here. Klein feels pain between his brows while spirit vision taxing his body. Old Neil explains symptoms. Old Neil details how spirit vision causes physical strain and hallucinations to new beyonders. Old Neil teaches Klein a swift mental switch to turn spirit vision on and off by tapping. Klein sets his own tap switch for spirit vision after practice to save time and energy. After tapping, Klein watches auras of many colors before he ends his spirit vision state. Klein feels drained after practice. Old Neil reminds him to rest well and continue learning. Dunn Smith praises Klein's spirit vision despite being a beginner, warning about curiosity. Dunn warns Klein not to overreach or seek forbidden knowledge as it can be deadly. Klein meets Roseanne and departs after greeting, keeping his new status hidden for now. Klein returns home exhausted and falls asleep quickly after preparing to rest. Klein wakes to bright noon light, checks watch, and prepares mentally for afternoon tarot gathering. He studies historical documents and his diary quietly, reinforcing his newfound knowledge. 2:57, he locks the door, dims the room, and prepares for astral projection. Klein floats amid grayish mist, seeing red stars and sensing strange familiarity around him. He calmly arrives at the seat of honor, immerses in fog, and touches 2 red stars. A dim basement, Alger Wilson studies a bottle with swirling dark liquid. The sealed bottle emits sounds of crashing waves and swirling mist inside. Alger checks the clock and feels a sudden, overwhelming red light engulfing him. Audrey sits before her dressing table, holding a golden fountain pen eagerly. A dark red beam bursts from Audrey's body, unseen in the mirror's reflection. Audrey arrives above the fog, greeting Klein and Alger at the Divine Hall. Klein greets Audrey and Alger calmly while maintaining his mysterious air. Klein studies the aura colors of justice and the Hanged Man carefully. Klein notices a deep blue stormy aura inside the Hanged Man's ether body. Audrey asks Alger if he received the ghost shark blood from her family vault. Alger praises the ghost shark blood and begins explaining the potion formula. Audrey repeats the potion ingredients as Alger confirms exact measurements. Alger advises daily cogitation practice to control the potion's power. Klein quietly absorbs the discussion, pondering deeper meanings. The Fool taps the table, offering cryptic advice to digest and act. Alger repeats the Fool's hint, feeling enlightened but still confused. Klein smiles mildly, calling the insight an advance payment for knowledge. Audrey, thoughtful, asks the Fool what task they should undertake next. Alger shakes his head and asks what mission they wish to entrust to them. Klein requests they retrieve Emperor Roselle's secret diary, even just a page. The group discusses Emperor Roselle's secret diary and its cryptic nature. Klein stays calm as Alger questions the diary's nature and its encrypted script. Audrey mentions the diary's cryptic language rumored to be mystic symbols or hieroglyphs. Klein imagines a humorous scene mocking the mystic symbols written by Emperor Roselle. They consider how to transmit the diary's text safely to Mr. Fool without physical exchange. Audrey projects a written poem onto the parchment, thrilling the group with success. Klein assures Audrey he only guides her thoughts without reading her mind. Alger encourages Audrey's memory and warns about spectator emotional detachment. Audrey expresses fascination with the spectator's objectivity and role as an observer. Klein contemplates the spectator's acting nature and its relation to Emperor Roselle's teachings. Alger shares news about a notorious pirate exploring the Sonia Sea eastern edge. Audrey recalls the pirate name and questions Alger's confirmation with interest. Klein reveals the lost Antigonus family notebook known to both Nighthawks and Secret Order. Alger speculates on the Church of Evernight Goddess's reaction to the lost notebook. Klein's eyes narrow as he realizes the Nighthawks' interest in the Antigonus notebook. Audrey shows deep interest as she hears more about the significance of the notebook. Audrey shares a quirky story about learning to faint elegantly at social events. Audrey explains the kingdom's rulers are under stress and eager for change after defeat. Audrey explains the kingdom suffers from chaotic government after every election. Alger mocks their slow reaction, comparing it to dangerous black mosquitoes. Klein proposes a public examination system to select elite civil servants. Audrey doubts the plan but listens as Klein explains gradual civil service reform. Alger joins in, calling monkeys better ministers than current ones. Audrey agrees the plan is simple but effective and praises Klein's wisdom. Klein decides to end today's meeting and reflects on guiding justice to help Benson. Audrey and Alger rise to leave as Klein severs their connection quietly. Klein watches the illusory figures of justice and Hanged Man dissipate above gray fog. Klein contemplates his new ability to connect to multiple dark red stars as a beyonder. He wonders about the newcomer and reflects on the risks of some summoning others. Klein believes the gods exist but are limited, especially since the fifth epoch. He sighs, decides not to force summoning others, choosing to wait and see. He releases spirituality and feels body as he imitates falling through membranes. Suddenly back in his room, Klein moves and feels his real body solidly present. He notices differences between gray fog and spirit world, then draws curtains wide. Klein breathes deeply, seeing pedestrians outside, preparing to act as seer. Audrey excitedly writes potion formula on parchment with ruby-studded pen. She plans to gather potion materials from vaults and consider seeking help. Audrey praises her dog Susie for completing a mission and smiles warmly. Alger studies a glowing palm, sighing over his inability to understand the summoning. He looks down at a goatskin parchment titled 7. Seafarer but finds no clues. Under the hot sun, Klein leaves his house wearing casual clothes. Klein notices the circus tents are gone. The troupe has left after performing. He recalls the animal trainer wasn't a guiding expert but left with the troupe. He shakes his head with a wry smile, doubting common story tropes. Mrs. Wendy Smiron greets Klein warmly at her bakery entrance. Wendy offers him newly made sweet iced tea and shares her southern memories. Klein enjoys the refreshing taste and feels better after talking with Wendy. Klein returns to a familiar street corner, now quieter and less crowded by hawkers. His heart feels heavy as a dark gloom envelopes the area unexpectedly. He activates his spirit vision and sees auras of gloom around the people nearby. The dark hopelessness has built from years of repression, tainting everyone here. He recalls old Neil's words, a seer's perception links to others' emotions. He taps again, concentrating, practicing spiritual perception for clues nearby. He explores 3 floors quietly, but finds no notebook or spiritual bodies. He sighs, knowing spirits mostly appear as spirituality, needing a medium's skill. After searching, Klein leaves and gazes at Welch's locked bungalow gate. He doubts the place needs searching, as others likely checked already. Klein jokes about his long walk lacking step counter rankings. Near the carriage stop, Klein notices several business signs on upper floors. He remembers he must act as a seer and decides to visit the divination club. Inside, a woman with coiled hair welcomes Klein with a smile at the foyer. She explains membership fees and club benefits in detail to Klein. The woman explains the club's diviners and their rates to Klein patiently. She notes most members are busy, only 5 diviners are present today. The woman introduces famous diviners, mentioning their specialties and fees. Klein picks the novice Glassy despite the woman's warning about his experience. He leads Klein through a corridor toward the meeting room for the divination. The attendant calls Glassy, who appears surprised but curious to meet Klein. Glassy chooses the dim topaz room for the session, hoping the spirits help. Glassy humbly admits his novice status while inviting Klein to sit for divination. Klein smiles and affirms his firm choice before sitting down opposite Glassy. Glassy explains divination is a hobby, offering a free session with a joke. Klein mentions a slight headache and the search for a lost item during divination. Glassy reads Klein's aura, noticing dark orange near his lungs, hinting illness. Glassy suggests a simple tarot to check if the lost item still exists. Klein performs the shuffle while asking if the antique notebook can be found. Glassy reveals the upside down full card, signifying the item cannot be found. Klein asks if the item is in others' hands, preparing for a second divination. The second inverted star card reveals the item has not been taken by others. Klein tips extra pennies to Glassy, respecting the tradition despite free offer. Before leaving, Klein warns Glassy to seek medical help for his lungs. Glassy mutters to himself, realizing the room's dimness darkens his appearance. After the club, Klein plans to save funds to join and work as a seer officially. At Blackthorn Security Company, Klein asks Leonard about Roseanne's whereabouts. Leonard reveals Roseanne is working the armory shift and ponders Welch's and Naya's suicides. Leonard questions why Klein survived while Welch and Naya killed themselves instantly. Leonard questions Klein about the notebook and recent mysterious events. Klein explains his theory about the suicide and the mysterious notebook's role. Leonard offers a new suspicion about the notebook as a breeding ground for evil. Klein refuses to defend himself about the mysterious suspicions towards his past. Leonard changes subject, hoping the goddess will bless them for their trials. Klein plans to try a new route tomorrow and draws bullets from the armory. Klein meets Roseanne and Brett in the armory, talking about shifting work shifts. Roseanne expresses concern over Klein choosing to become a Beyonder as a seer. Brett admits fear of Beyonder work. Counsel from a dying Beyonder lingers. Roseanne questions Klein's attire and plans as he collects the bullets from the table. Roseanne and Brett discuss their shift changes and part ways at the street. Klein practices shooting intensely at the club, perfecting his skills and posture. After shooting, Klein trains his body hard to improve his strength and endurance. Melissa returns home carrying groceries and an explanation about money use. Melissa debates the transport cost, favoring walking despite the expense risk. Klein convinces Melissa to use public carriage to save time for studying and success. Melissa agrees reluctantly to take public carriage for school after Klein's reasoning. Klein takes the groceries from Melissa and encourages healthy eating and learning. Next morning, Klein meets Old Neil and Roseanne at the company, greeting with respect. Old Neil jokes about last night's overheard conversations as Klein denies hearing anything. Old Neil directs Klein to the armory for mysticism lessons starting this morning. Klein asks about new lessons. Old Neil prepares to teach interesting mystic trick. Klein follows Old Neil's strange coffee task with keen and curious interest. Klein prepares 2 cups of coffee using hand, ground coffee beans, and hot water. Klein contaminates 1 cup with mud from his leather boots, then stirs both carefully. Old Neil returns and tests the coffee with a moonstone pendulum for divination. Pendulum spins counterclockwise, revealing the cup with the unpleasant addition. Old Neil explains pendulum dowsing divination and the meanings of motions. Old Neil teaches Klein the proper use of pendulum dowsing with clear instructions. Klein questions the meanings of pendulum motions, confirming interpretations with Old Neil. Klein reflects internally on the usefulness and limits of simple spirit dowsing methods. Old Neil offers a spirit pendulum to Klein, hinting at team perks for Beyonders. Klein hesitates about applying to the team while Old Neil encourages without pay rise perks. Old Neil begins the mysticism curriculum by asking about Klein's understanding of symbolism. Klein attempts to identify a mystical symbol, guessing eyelashes with uncertainty. Old Neil explains the bumper harvest constellation and other primordial symbols. Klein comments humorously on how unsophisticated the names of old constellations are. Old Neil smiles, recounting Emperor Roselle's wish to rename the constellations. Old Neil continues teaching different symbols and the astrolabe's use for divination. Old Neil ends the lesson, reminding Klein to review notes and practice daily. Old Neil advises Klein to practice cogitation daily and deepen potions effects. Klein expresses plans to join the divination club once financially ready. Old Neil encourages Klein to seek financial support from Dunn for club expenses. Old Neil entrusts Klein with monitoring the divination club as part of his role. Klein admits to using dirt in coffee and Old Neil reacts with shocked laughter. Klein leaves to the Blackthorn security basement, footsteps echoing quietly. Enters Blackthorn, familiarizing the spatial layout around the quiet offices. He recalls office arrangement: left corridor with 3 rooms, right corridor with 3 offices. The entertainment room shows Leonard and teammates playing the local card game Fighting Evil. Rosen tends the reception. Brett rests after night shift. Cesare is out again. Klein finds the typewriter and types his expenditure application with rhythmic taps. Klein presents the signed funding application to Captain Dunn before lunch arrives. Dunn admits the budget application is late due to overwhelming June cases. Klein keeps a disciplined daily routine of mysticism, study, and practice. Audrey celebrates a successful mystical potion with bubbling silver liquid. Audrey tries to avoid a duchess's invitation, but Annie insists they attend. Audrey feigns a headache and plans to hide from the afternoon tea invitation. She returns alone to her lab, then finds Susie missing and the door ajar. Inside, shattered glass and Susie licking the last drops of silver potion appear. At sea, Alger Wilson chooses loyalty to the storm over title or wealth. Panicked Audrey drinks the silver spectator potion, emotions mixing with relief. Storm reigns on Tingen as Klein, Roseanne, and Brett share modest rations inside. Rosen notes only 1 Nighthawk present as Brett explains cultist case dispatch. Klein eats quietly, dabbing bread in meat juice, silver chain glinting under sleeve. Soaked Man arrives at Blackthorn with a mission request for the former mercenary squad. A lanky man seeks mission help from nearly empty security company amid the storm. Rosen explains all personnel are on missions. Visitor sadly leaves disappointed. Roseanne and Klein share dry humor while waiting as rain continues outside the door. Klein silently finishes his soup and settles in to wait, pondering team's mission limits. Klein reads city newspaper, pausing at tragic news about murdered victims Welch and Naya. Klee returns desperate for help. Roseanne awakens, motioning him to sit and wait. Klee explains all others turned him away. Blackthorn is his last hope for mission help. The butler describes the rising fear in Tingen after a violent armed robbery spree. Klein and Rosen exchange glances, reflecting on company's poor contracts and lack of clients. Leonard Mitchell arrives and greets client Klee, inviting him to share the mission details. Klee details the kidnapping of young Elliot, offers heavy reward for safe rescue. Leonard muses on the urgency and reward, catching Roseanne's playful eye nearby. Roseanne teases Leonard about his tendency to act like a poet when writing contracts. Signed contract passed and stamped. Klee thanks team and departs with hope renewed. Leonard turns to Klein, proposing they team up for the mission despite weather risks. Klein hesitates briefly but agrees, curious how his new seer skill might help locate Elliot. They finalize plans to work together while rain eases, preparing for the hard search ahead. Leonard asks Klein if he needs anything from Klee for divining Elliot's location. Klein requests Elliot's unwashed clothes and accessories to aid the divination. Leonard explains Klein's unique pet helps find Elliot using his clothes and picture. Klee offers to accompany Klein and Leonard to the Victorian residence to save time. Klee hands Leonard a black and white photo of Elliot for their search. Klein pockets Elliot's photo, dons his hat and cane, ready for the journey. The carriage interior feels cozy as they ride quietly through the rainy streets. Leonard praises the carriage driver while Klein remains silent and watchful. Klee delivers Elliot's clothes and storm amulet after returning from the street. Klein examines Elliot's miniature suit and bronze storm amulet with focus. Klee recounts the kidnapping details while Klein and Leonard listen carefully. Klein and Leonard part ways with Klee and hire a private two-wheeled carriage. Leonard instructs the driver to charge by time and closes the carriage door. Klein unfolds Elliot's clothes and entwines the storm amulet around his cane. Klein enters a half-cogitation state, repeating Elliot's location in his mind. Klein's cane, acting as a dowsing rod, falls pointing straight ahead inside the carriage. Leonard orders the driver to continue straight as Klein confirms the direction. Klein uses dowsing to adjust direction after the carriage circles a building once. Klein's cane points to a spot inside a 3-story building after the ride. Klein and Leonard enter the building and test each floor with dowsing rod seeking. On the 3rd floor, Klein's cane points to the right door with subtle magical symptoms. Klein counts 3 kidnappers and 1 hostage by sensing auras through the door. Leonard recites a melancholic poem as Klein prepares to confront the kidnappers. Leonard's lullaby fills the air, slowing Klein's mind and senses. Klein senses a strange focus behind him, like wandering in the spirit world. Leonard smirks and breaks the door lock with a practice punch. Klein draws his revolver cautiously while Leonard opens the door smoothly. They spot a sleeping kidnapper and another waking as Leonard strikes him down. Klein hears footsteps approaching and readies his gun near the stairwell. Man in a brown coat raises his hands with bread bag after Klein commands him. Leonard spots the man and mocks the idea of him as a kidnapper's accomplice. The man throws bread bag to block Klein's view just before the gunshot flies. Klein shoots true, hitting the man's shoulder, who falls as Leonard jumps down. Leonard drags the unconscious man inside holding a sharp dagger found on him. They find Elliot Vicroy waking up, tied up but relieved to see them. Leonard orders Klein to find police while joking about walking out with children. Klein goes downstairs, feeling forgotten as Leonard remains with Elliot. Outside, Klein finds 2 policemen and reports the case without his badge. Leonard signals Klein to sneak out, saying police station is a waste of time. Klee arrives with Vicroy, both surprised by the rapid news of rescue. Leonard smiles and shakes hands with Klein, bidding farewell after success. They discuss commission earnings and Leonard jokes about aristocratic customs. At home, Klein finds a mysterious black notebook with the Fool Tarot image. The Fool's mouth smiles faintly beneath a dark line, filling Klein with dread. Klein wakes, sensing the Antigonus notebook across kidnapper's den. Struggles with misbuttoned shirt and uses cogitation to calm. Klein holsters his revolver and dresses formally, preparing to leave. He steps into the corridor, gently closing the door behind him. Klein leaves a note for his siblings before stepping out into the quiet street. Outside, cool air calms Klein as street lamps glow in dawn's early light. He checks his pocket watch. It's 6 in the morning under crimson moonlight. Klein hails an early public carriage, surprised such service exists so soon. Driver and ticket officer explain shifts. Klein listens while seated inside. Klein reflects quietly on yesterday's events as the carriage picks up passengers. Sunup, carriage arrives at Zutland Street. Klein tips his hat and exits. Klein enters Blackthorn security. Leonard smokes as Nighthawk waits. Klein reports feeling of deja vu and notebook location to Dunn Smith. Dunn orders Kenley, Old Neil, and Fry to join plan for armory watch. Kenley and Fry arrive. Carriage departs with 5 Beyonders aboard. Dunn demands mission details. Klein recounts events while Old Neil smiles. They reach the target building, alert and cautious, they prepare to enter. Klein confirms the door. Leonard breaks the lock with a powerful punch. The stench of a rotting corpse fills the air as door creeps open. Old woman's decayed body swells. Maggots crawl amid a rotten, foul stench. Klein's nausea overcomes him as the stench of rot and death fills the room. Klein vomits uncontrollably but soon recovers with help from Fry's flask. Fry offers a flask to Klein, clearing his nose and easing his nausea. Fry examines the decomposed corpse without gloves, cold and detached. Dunn and Leonard search the room carefully while Old Neil complains outside. Dunn asks Klein if the place looks familiar amid sensing uneasy memories. Klein's spirit vision flashes past memories of the familiar room and objects. Klein mentions feeling déjà vu and murmurs hormesis, phlegria, repeatedly. Dunn opens a cupboard revealing moldy bread and dead rats, orders Leonard to fetch cops. Dunn and Fry inspect bedrooms carefully. Fry confirms death was natural 5 days ago. Old Neil senses invisible energy sealing the place, suggesting ritual magic usage. Leonard returns with a policeman who begins questioning neighbors intensely. Police officer reveals victim's identity and her family's disappearance from neighbors. Dunn demands a photo of missing Ray Bieber. Police says none available at station. Dunn orders thorough questioning. Old Neil prepares ritual powders and incense. Old Neil utters incantations, forming a protective force field around himself. The ritual intensifies as Old Neil's eyes turn pitch black and he draws a portrait. Old Neil reveals Ray Bieber's image with ceramic tooth and black hair features. Klein tries dowsing for Ray Bieber's location, but an unknown power hinders him. Dunn orders final confirmation from residents, then plans to issue an arrest warrant. Leonard and police finish procedures. Dunn and Fry seek aid at city bars. Back at Blackthorn, Klein questions Old Neil about the strange notebook's path. Old Neil explains the notebook's power likely caused deaths and sealed clues. Klein wonders why the notebook was sent to Ray Bieber. Neil suggests possible reasons. Klein admits he discovered the notebook's loss too late. Neil laughs at Dunn's worry. Old Neil explains the notebook's danger and warns Klein about its power. Old Neil assures Klein the secret powers won't target them anymore. Klein feels relief but worries about the notebook's lingering connection. Old Neil jokes about Klein's lack of faith and their playful bond. They tap chests 4 times, chanting praise as a sign of camaraderie. Mrs. Oriana enters Blackthorn, greeting Klein and Neil with warmth. Old Neil compliments Oriana, sparking playful banter about her age. Oriana tells Klein about the mission's commission and payment rules. Oriana recounts the old butler's surprised praise for Blackthorn's success. Klein jokes the kidnappers were just unlucky without divine protection. Oriana humbly claims they're just an ordinary security company. Old Neil envies Klein's luck in earning a large commission early on. Old Neil reveals his modest weekly salary from the church and police. Klein compares Old Neil's salary to top lawyers and trading managers. Old Neil explains material costs for mysticism and ritual practice. Neil reveals underground markets sell mystic materials beyond church control. Old Neil advises knowing underground markets aids obtaining rare supplies. Klein asks to visit the underground market. Neil hesitates, citing debts. Neil declines travel. Klein offers to lend money from his recent commission. Old Neil declines money but admits age is his greatest enemy, plans lessons. Klein bids farewell and prepares to explore the Divination Club energized. Klein returns to Divination Club and greets the elegant hostess again. Klein surprises the hostess as she recalls him from 5 days ago clearly. She explains he's the first and only client for Mr. Glassy so far. Klein inquires when Mr. Glassy last came. Hostess replies uncertainly. Hostess confirms Glassy has not returned since Klein's last visit 5 days ago. Klein decides to join the club instead of seeking divination today. Angelica explains joining fees and hands Klein a form to fill out. Klein fills the form, carefully omitting his birth date to shroud mysteries. Angelica awards Klein member cufflinks, explaining their special inscription. Angelica offers Klein options for divination arts and club activities. Klein states he knows some divination and asks to practice on others. Angelica agrees but warns Klein won't be promoted yet to customers. Klein sets his fortune charges low initially to attract customers cheaply. Klein walks toward study room hearing a thick accent as class begins. Klein joins, seated circle listening while examining aura colors silently. Klein assesses Hannah's worried aura part while enjoying coffee discreetly. Edward Steve greets Klein after class and they discuss divination skills. Klein and Edward share opinions about astrology and their divination talents. Edward explains the importance of setting fortune fees in the middle range. Klein returns to Angelica to raise his divination price to 8 pence. Hanas announces a new magic mirror divination class, sparking Klein's worry. He knows divination types split by their source of revelation. First category uses the inquirer's spirit to connect with revelations. Spirit pendulums need high spirituality for precise results. Second category uses calculations and personal details for answers. Third category uses external forces like Ouija or magic mirrors. Magic mirror divination can be safe or dangerous depending on method. Hanas explains timing and astromancy in magic mirror use. Silver coating and moon positioning are key to magic mirror setup. The process requires sincere prayer and gentle breaking of the mirror. Orthodox divination gives faint clues, beyonders can see deeply. Edward remarks on vague interpretations shaping hope for all. He points out survival bias affecting fortune, telling accuracy. Klein tries to avoid beyonder topics to keep peace in the club. Despite efforts, no guests pick Klein for fortune telling today. He plans to be more proactive but shuns untrue seer tricks. He gathers his cane and bids everyone a farewell before leaving. Edward spots Glassy outside and greets his frail friend warmly. Glassy reveals his pneumonia and thanks his wife for cure. Edward notes no sign of illness from his own fortune telling. Angelica greets and mentions Klein's club membership to Glassy. Glassy asks Edward and Angelica to tell Klein to visit again. Edward inquires about Klein's effect on Glassy with concern. Glassy calls Klein a very magical doctor excitedly. Klein explains an urgent task forced him to work early this evening. Klein gives Benson £5 to buy new clothes for himself. Benson doubts Klein can rob a bank, and Melissa supports the claim. Klein explains the £5 was earned through urgent work he did. Benson plans to study accountancy and improve his salary over 5 years. Klein suggests Benson improve his grammar using books from his room. Benson toasts with siblings to a bright future full of hope. Benson suggests Melissa needs a new dress for Selena's birthday party. Melissa shares news of a formal visit planned from their next door neighbor. Benson recalls Mrs. Shoud's husband is a senior solicitor in the area. Klein reflects on formal neighbor visits and prefers natural interactions. Benson explains middle-class customs and the meaning of a morning call. Klein reminds to buy coffee, tea, and treats from Mrs. Smyron for neighbors. Next morning, Klein greets Roseanne on Zutland Street before heading to basement. Klein meets Cold Nighthawk member Royale Radine, who warns of danger. Old Neil invites Klein to practice ritual magic at his bungalow outside town. They arrive at Old Neil's rose-filled bungalow with warm interior and garden. Old Neil shows Klein the living room set for ritual magic, citing his late wife. Old Neil pulls a goatskin parchment with strange ink markings to start ritual. Old Neil writes 30 and pound on parchment, announcing a debt ritual today.